At 4:18 a.m. local time, I watched 24 timestamps collapse into 3 impacts, 3 Ukrainian A-196 Leopards drones, out of a formation that once numbered 24, soar punched through every layer of Russian air defense and slammed into one of the largest e-commerce logistics complexes on Russian soil. Wildberries, hundreds of kilometers behind the front line, behind radar stations, electronic warfare units, and short-range interceptors. Power failed across entire warehouse sections. Automated sorting lines froze. Smoke rolled through storage halls packed with merchandise belonging to thousands of independent sellers. Early estimates placed the damage between $3 and $4.4 billion. But the fire was not the story. The story was how 3 drones, cheap, slow, propeller-driven, survived a gauntlet that destroyed 21 of their brothers. And why Russia, which won nearly every individual engagement that night, still lost the only engagement that mattered. What the Russian air defense commander covering that sector did not know at 12:41 a.m. was that the formation splitting apart on his screens was not falling apart. It was doing exactly what Ukraine had programmed it to do. Let me take you back 3.5 hours before impact. At 12:41 a.m., 24 A-196 Leopards drones crossed into western Russian airspace and immediately broke into 3 groups. The main body dropped to between 70 and 110 meters. A second group angled north. A third took a route roughly 10 kilometers longer than the others. That extra distance created about 4 minutes of separation between branches. 4 minutes does not sound like much, but in air defense terms, 4 minutes is the difference between a coordinated intercept and a scrambled guess. If Russia identified the first group correctly, those 4 minutes still gave them time to warn the next sector and slide a mobile battery toward the alternate approaches. Ukraine was betting that Russia would see the branches but not understand the architecture connecting them. A formation that looks broken is harder to prioritize than one that looks organized. Now here is where the physics started working against both sides simultaneously. Ahead of the main formation lay 12 kilometers of exposed industrial ground. At 150 kilometers per hour, those drones needed almost 5 minutes to cross it. Sitting over that approach was a Russian Podlet K-1 low-altitude surveillance radar. The Podlet K-1 sweeps its sector roughly once every 8 seconds. Over a 5-minute crossing, that is more than 30 chances to build a stable track on the incoming formation. On paper, this radar should have killed the mission before it started. In reality, the Leopards were flying between 50 and 90 meters above ground, threading tree lines, shallow terrain folds, and warehouse edges. Every obstruction hid them for several seconds, long enough to break one radar track before the next sweep arrived. The Podlet K-1 was not blind. It was seeing fragments. A return would appear, hold for one sweep, vanish behind a metal roof, reappear 8 seconds later in a slightly different position. The crew could not tell whether they were watching one drone maneuvering or 4 drones on parallel routes. Then one Leopard made a mistake that nearly ended the mission early. One aircraft climbed to 150 meters to clear an industrial obstacle. On the next sweep, its radar return strengthened. 8 seconds later, it was still there. A third sweep would have given the Russian crew speed, heading, and enough data to project the formation's destination. That single drone, visible for less than 30 seconds, threatened to expose every aircraft behind it. The reason it did not was the route itself. Ukraine had built that approach using reconnaissance flights, satellite imagery, terrain data, known radar positions, and intelligence reportedly shared by the United States and France. Washington and Paris supplied pieces of the picture. Ukraine connected them, not into one safe corridor but into dozens of brief breaks in radar coverage. No single break lasted more than a few seconds. No single break was guaranteed to remain open. The route was not a hallway. It was a chain of closing doors, and the drones had to pass through each one before it shut. At 12:49 a.m., 3 more weak returns appeared near the original track. The Podlet K-1 was now showing 4 contacts on similar headings. On the next sweep, 2 vanished behind structures. A third faded into ground clutter. Only the original track held. 8 more seconds could have exposed the entire route. The next sweep came. The original held briefly, then two weaker returns reappeared several kilometers farther east, and the picture broke apart again. A fourth contact appeared for less than 10 seconds before vanishing behind warehouses and low terrain. Russian operators compared feeds from nearby stations, checked civilian flight activity, matched contacts by speed and direction. All four were moving at roughly 145 to 155 kilometers per hour. That confirmed coordination. It did not reveal scale, and that is the core of what made this attack so difficult to stop. If Russia treated every return as a separate drone, it would scatter interceptors across false positions. If it merged the returns too early, it would underestimate the number of aircraft still moving underneath. At 50 to 90 meters, the Lyutis were not invisible. Their returns were being broken apart by metal roofs, trucks, communications towers, factory structures, and uneven ground. Russia could see the attack in fragments. It could not see the shape. But the same terrain punishing Russian radar was also punishing Ukraine. One Lyuti dropped lower to stay beneath the radar line. Navigation error pulled it toward a tree line. It tried to correct, lost clearance, and struck the ground. A second drifted several kilometers from its programmed path as inertial error accumulated. A third clipped a power line crossing an industrial access road. 24 had entered the route, 21 remained. The terrain that was hiding Ukraine's drones was also killing them. Then the northern branch made its move, and this is where the real cost of the attack was paid. 6 contacts appeared farther north. They climbed almost together, pushing through 140 meters. Their radar returns strengthened almost instantly. A Panzer S-1 battery covering the next sector turned its fire control radar toward the group and began assigning targets. The Panzer S-1 carries 12 57E-6 missiles. Each one accelerates to roughly Mach 3.3. Effective range against a low-altitude target like a Lyuti sits around 9 kilometers. Less than 20 seconds after acquisition, the first missile left the launcher. The lead Lyuti was destroyed at roughly 9 kilometers. 6 seconds later, a second missile struck the aircraft behind it. The remaining 4 split apart, forcing the Panzer crew to rebuild separate tracks. But the system was fast. A third Lyuti broke apart before it could descend again. The fourth was destroyed less than a minute later. Electronic warfare hit the remaining pair. One lost its program line and drifted north. The last held its heading but had been carried too far off its assigned approach to recover. In less than 2 minutes, the northern branch went from the clearest threat in the sector to wreckage. Here is what matters. Those 6 drones were not expendable decoys. Every one of them carried a warhead. Everyone had an assigned target inside the Wildberries complex. Had they survived, they would have joined the final strike. But by climbing and becoming the most visible contacts on Russian screens, they absorbed the Panzer battery's attention and its missile inventory for 2 critical minutes. Russia had not chosen badly. It had fired at the targets it could identify with the highest confidence. Ukraine had turned that certainty into delay. While the Panzer was killing the northern branch, the low group advanced almost 9 kilometers closer to the target. Reports from separate radar sectors now began matching. The northern branch, the low formation, and the delayed third group were all converging on the same logistics zone. 21 drones had remained after the first terrain losses. Now only 15 were still capable of continuing toward the target. The closest were 32 kilometers from Wildberries. At 150 kilometers per hour, Russia had less than 13 minutes. Near the complex, a second Panzer entered combat mode. Over the next 5.5 minutes, the surviving groups crossed another 14 kilometers. Before they reached 18 kilometers from Wildberries, 4 more Lyutis were removed from viable approaches. 2 were intercepted in the outer sector. 1 drifted beyond correction under jamming. Another accumulated enough navigation error to miss the route entirely. 15 had remained. Now 11 still had a realistic path. They dropped to between 35 and 60 meters, moving through industrial blocks and outer residential districts. Then the satellite navigation picture collapsed. GNSS jamming intensified across the final approach corridor. 2 drones started drifting from their programmed lines. A third corrected late and crossed an open gap between 2 factory buildings. The Panzer fire control radar caught it. One missile destroyed the Lyuty before it reached the next row of warehouses. 6 seconds later, another drone appeared through a different gap. The second missile left the launcher. 2 aircraft destroyed before the remaining group cleared the industrial blocks. Jamming claimed 3 more. One struck the ground as its inertial system failed to arrest the drift. 2 drifted beyond any viable correction, and a fourth continued without satellite guidance. But its growing error carried it outside its assigned approach. In less than 2 minutes, the number still capable of reaching the correct area fell from 11 to 5. 19 of the original 24 aircraft had been destroyed, lost, or diverted. The attack appeared broken. But Ukraine had never depended on every drone reaching the warehouse. Before launch, the formation had been divided into overlapping mission branches. Several aircraft carried primary and secondary aim points across different functional sections of the complex. The survivors were not receiving last-second orders to change targets. They were continuing along routes already stored on board. Russia had destroyed most of the formation. It had not destroyed the architecture of the attack. 5 Lyutis entered the final approach. The Panzer locked the leader. The drone disappeared behind the last line of industrial buildings. When it reappeared, range 1.6 kilometers, the crew had seconds. A missile left the launcher and destroyed it before it crossed the perimeter. 4 remained. 1 continued on inertial guidance, but its error widened during the final approach. It passed its assigned section by several hundred meters and struck outside the main storage area. 3 aircraft were still moving. Their stored routes covered overlapping functional sections of the complex. The first surviving Lyuty cleared the final line of buildings at less than 50 meters. The Panzer tried to rebuild the track, but the drone was already crossing the perimeter. It pitched down toward the utility side of the complex and exploded. Power failed across sections. Automated systems stopped. A second Lyuty came in from another angle, skimming above warehouse roofs before dropping sharply toward the sorting area. It struck near the warehouse and processing zone. The final drone continued deeper into the complex, lowered its nose, and drove into a densely packed storage section. The blast tore through the impact area and pushed fire into surrounding packaging and stored goods. The explosions alone did not create billions of dollars in losses. Power loss stopped the movement of goods. Packages remained trapped inside dense storage rows. Fire spread through wrapping and packing material while smoke, heat, and water damage reached merchandise far beyond the impact points. Fire crews had to reach the interior through roads crowded with trucks, loading equipment, and evacuating workers. 24 Lyutis entered the mission. 3 reached the functional areas they had been programmed to threaten. The entire formation may have cost several $million. The combined losses and affected merchandise were estimated between 3 and 4.4 billion. Now let me tell you what this actually means, because the explosion footage is not the point. First, Russia won the intercept battle and lost the war. Russian air defenses destroyed or neutralized 21 out of 24 drones. That is an interception rate above 87%. By any statistical measure, that is a successful defense. But the 3 that broke through caused damage that no number of successful intercepts can offset. This is the central problem of modern air defense against cheap saturation attacks. You can win every round except one and still lose everything behind you. Second, Russia now faces a resource allocation crisis that has no clean answer. Before this strike, Wildberries did not have dedicated military air defense coverage. It was a civilian logistics hub. Now every major civilian logistics complex, every e-commerce warehouse, every distribution center deep inside Russian territory has to ask the same question. Where is our Pantsir battery? Russia cannot protect every high-value civilian target and maintain coverage over air bases, refineries, ammunition depots, and military infrastructure simultaneously. Every battery moved to cover a warehouse is a battery removed from covering something else. Ukraine does not need to destroy the air defense network. It needs to make Russia spread it thinner than the threat demands. Third, the cost ratio is existential. A formation of 24 Lyutis, even accounting for the guidance systems, relay infrastructure, and mission planning, likely cost a fraction of the damage inflicted. A few $1 million of Ukrainian drones generated billions in economic disruption. No military budget in history has survived that kind of exchange ratio indefinitely. Russia is not losing because its defenses are failing. Russia is losing because its defenses are succeeding at a price it cannot afford to keep paying. The message to Moscow is not that Russian air defense failed. The message is that even when Russian air defense works well, 3 drones out of 24 is enough, and Ukraine can launch 24 more tomorrow night. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. Here is what I want to know from you. Drop it in the comments. If Russia pulled a Panzer battery from a military airfield to cover Wildberries permanently, which target does Ukraine hit next? The airfield that lost its air defense, or the next unprotected warehouse down the highway? That is the dilemma this strike created, and I do not think Moscow has an answer yet.